Welcome to this episode of the People's Podcast, where we share and connect to share stories, experiences, and professional insight on people versus various specialist topics. Today, as we wrap up the month of October, Cyber Awareness Month, and with recent case studies from companies like Jaguar Land Rover and Max and Spencer's in the UK, we are discussing cybersecurity. I am your host, Cecilia Kadipe, Director of CFDL Consulting, a specialist advisory consultancy practice driving risk management, assurance and innovation globally. Today, I am joined by Mike Welsh, a valued associate and our Director of Technology and the Built Environment. Mike is a respected leader in smart Internet of Things systems and cybersecurity. Mike is co-founder of Concentric IoT, and has a wealth of experience driving innovation in technology and operating systems. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Cecilia. Thank you for inviting me, and hopefully I'm going to make some useful contributions today.
Wonderful. So, Mike, we're going to begin by exploring your career journey. And I want to thank you specifically for joining today. Mike, could you kindly share with us your professional journey and how you got started in the specialist field?
Well, it starts at a very young age. I always had a fascination with how things worked. So I always used to spend a lot of hours taking things apart and then occasionally putting them back together again. And occasionally they sometimes still worked. Quite often they didn't. But that's the value of learning lessons. I then, that kind of fascination led me to join a leading UK defence company, both doing an apprenticeship and then leading to doing an engineering degree as part of a sandwich course with that organisation and earning myself a degree in electrical and electronic engineering. Very quickly, I discovered that my personality didn't fit large organizations. Some of my most joyous days were short-circuiting very established systems and people and departmental architectures to get the things I wanted to do done.
Yes.
So I realized quickly that this was not an environment that would enjoy my company, and I would struggle to enjoy it. So I very quickly learned that I wasn't a large enterprise person. I was definitely a small enterprise person. And that found me moving into the world of semiconductors, both from a technology and then into a world of sales, marketing, and then C-suite management and so on. So, I found my niche in terms of the business where there was lots of flexibility, lots of quick decision making. Yes, many mistakes, but we learned from those and moved on.
Absolutely.
And so on. That then led me to start or co-found a technology business in the world of connected devices, ubiquitous computing, as we called it back in the early 90s. A fascinating world that was opening up of widgets, things, not computers, but smaller things, smaller intelligent things, all being networked together to create some kind of outcome. And that proved a very exciting time for that whole thinking, that whole industry globally. That then morphed into the world of the Internet of Things. And then come 2017, that business was sold to an American company. And 2 years later, I semi-retired, only to find myself being invited to join a startup company in the world of cybersecurity to help address the problem that hundreds, if not thousands, of companies like the one I had just sold had created. And that is, we had created the opportunity to empower systems and devices to be connected to the internet without any thought to the fact that bad actors in the world might have an interest in that subject as well, for their own reasons. And so now here we were with millions of devices around the world connected to the internet, completely undefended and completely unprotected in our buildings, and specifically in the systems installed in buildings, so lighting, heating, ventilation, to control, and so on and so on, that we're now becoming threatened for monetary gain by the bad actors of the world. So that has become, my new world that I have embraced. So everything had a link all the way along.
Yes.
So sort of growing knowledge, growing understanding, building a greater and greater picture. I think if I'm expert in anything, it's about having a big picture as opposed to having a very specific place where you need huge amounts of expertise and concentration and so on. So that's my.
That has been wonderful to hear. And, what a fascinating career path you have had, Mike. And, one of the things that stopped with me when you were saying it's been a journey, you have learned through it and you've learned to see the bigger picture. And that is particularly important to people in the early to mid career stages so that they can understand that you don't just start with a profession, you evolve through it, you learn through it, and then you sort of begin to understand how you fit into the biggest grand scheme of things. So thank you for that. So my next question for you, Mike, with your journey so far, what would you say were the standout experiences? What projects throughout your career that helped to really shape your approach to work, Mike?
Well, I think it started, as I sort of referred to just in that brief introduction to my career, in very quickly understanding where I might fit in and where I might not fit in. So
Yes.
it really wasn't project related. It was just that work experience of, I think all young people have, as young people, we have no idea really where we fit in. Exactly. And it's a journey of discovery where you
Yes.
work out where your place may be, where you can best deliver your talents or best learn and expand your talents and so on. So, those first few years of realizing that, yes, I was working in this huge defense company, which had lots of exciting things going on. I mean, there's,
Yes.
as a young person with a fascination of technology and engineering, watching a huge torpedo on a vibration table, actually bending and flexing, as it's being tested and so on. It was just a fascinating moment. I mean,
Yeah.
that was it. It was it contributed to that fascination of material science and so on. But the big lesson I learned was I didn't fit into a large organization.
Yes.
And the fun I was having short circuiting the organization structures to get the things I needed to do done really wasn't going to work very well.
Yes.
Wasn't going to aid my career in that organization for long. And so, just strangely, being at a party, half listening to a conversation somebody else was having about where they had just recently joined a small business in this technology
Yes.
sector that I was aware of but not being much involved in, and suddenly my ears pricking up and the recording machine going on trying to pick out the key details that then prompted me to write a letter, because we used to write letters back then,
Yeah.
with an envelope and a stamp on it, having found the address of this company, to its managing director, saying, "This is me. This is what I've done. This is who I am. This is what I think I might be able to bring based on my experience so far. I would welcome an opportunity if you have one." And lo and behold, I get a phone call and an interview.
Oh, amazing.
And I end up joining that organization, which at that time, was an organization of maybe a dozen people. And by the time I left it, it had 300 people. It had gone from a few million to 100 million. And my career had moved from, the beginnings of that company all the way to the C-suite of that operation, and all the experiences that I had gathered and garnered, all the way along, including, and it's only because it came up yesterday in one of the presentations at the AI conference I was at, and this was about women in engineering, how they're
Yes.
still underrepresented in engineering, and particularly in the world of electronics and semiconductors and so on and so forth. And remembering that back in the 80s, as part of my career development, I was managing a sales force of about 40 people, of which about 35 were women in the semiconductor industry. So we were way ahead of the game back in the
Yeah.
80s to where things are even today. Anyway, so those are kind of it's not project related. It's really more about experiences and the people I met along the way that helped inform me, about myself, push me sometimes to places where I didn't know I could go. Sometimes they push me, in truth, they push me over the line. So this story isn't one of a perfect, happy forever journey.
Yes.
There was a period in my working life where it went very dark and very black over a relatively short space of time and caused
Yeah.
huge, what's the word, dislocations in my life until I sort of managed to build out of that process. So it wasn't a perfectly joyous forever journey. So I think it's, I mean, there have been so many projects in terms of technology that I've been involved in that have been fascinating and interesting and so on that it's hard to pick any one that would make any meaningful sense. It was more about the people and the organizations I was involved in that informed me about the possibilities of life, not just technology, that really formed my career and to where I am today.
Thank you, Mike. That has been really valuable. From the beginning of that conversation, when you talked about getting the work experience, the practical work experience, and how that inspired you, to you attending what was a party at the time, but what we would probably call networking, where you sort of developed some confidence. You listened to a conversation and you were confident enough to write to the head of that organization and they employed you, and how you sort of took a mentors who helped to shape your career, how you sort of got yourself out of difficult, challenging situations that we all go through in our career that we're unprepared for, but somehow we have to get the strength to sort of summon the courage to sort of get ourselves out of that. So that's been really, really wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for that insight. You have said all the things that are really important to me. You've touched on risk management, audit, auditing the infrastructure, governance. You've talked about security, all of those things that are really, really important to me in the work that I do. And I'm sure all of our audience have found this discussion really valuable. I'd like to
Actually,
thank you.
Actually,
Yes, Mike.
sorry to interrupt. I would add just one more thing. There is a serious cost, and that is the cost of doing nothing.
Yes.
And you only have to ask the CFO of JLR, what is the cost of the recent impact that they had? One would imagine, for instance, if they had had the simple thing of an incident report, an incident plan in place, we would never have heard of the incident they had, and they would
Yeah.
have been back up and running in hours.
Yeah.
It clearly didn't exist, hence why they were here. Go and ask the CFO of Marks and Spencer's the real cost of that attack. And there are countless examples. Some are many are elsewhere on the planet, and some maybe we don't get to hear about. So in terms of cybersecurity, there is a very painful cost of doing nothing.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mike. And including the cost of inaction, as you have highlighted just now. Thank
Yep.
you for that, Mike. I'd like to thank you once again for joining and being such a remarkable host on this podcast. I also want to thank all of our listeners. Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. We invite you to stay connected to us by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following CFBO Consulting on LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care.
Thanks for watching, like, comment, and subscribe.